So this is a Stop the Presses story. The FBI is the largest and most powerful domestic law enforcement agency in the world. It can't become a secret police force. If it does, this is no longer a free country, and it's no better than, say, Russia under Putin or any authoritarian state. It is an authoritarian state by definition if the largest domestic law enforcement agency starts to play in domestic politics. But they are, and we know that, and no one's saying anything about it, and that's very strange. We do know that the Twitter executive who went to those meetings, the meetings with the FBI, was a man called Yoel Roth. Now, if you think about it, it was never clear what Yoel Roth was doing at Twitter in the first place. Yoel Roth had no technical expertise of any kind. He didn't know anything about hacking, foreign affairs, didn't know anything about Russia. What does he know about? Well, Yoel Roth received a PhD in the study of Grindr, the gay sex hookup app, from a place called UPenn, the University of Pennsylvania, purportedly an Ivy League school you should be impressed by. We're not making this up, by the way. Grindr appears more than 800 times in his research, and UPenn gave him a PhD for that. So whatever you think of that, how did that get Yoel Roth into the position that he occupied at Twitter, where he was in charge of what you were allowed to say and think? Well, the one qualification we know Yoel Roth did have is he does not believe in free speech, period. And he made that very clear in an interview last week.
Babylon Bee, which is what got him to buy the thing, I think.
That's the
one which was not particularly funny. The Babylon Bee's Man of the Year is Rachel Levine. Not funny.
The targeting and the victimization of the trans community on Twitter is very real, very life-threatening, and extraordinarily serious. We have seen from a number of Twitter accounts, including libs of TikTok notably, that there are orchestrated campaigns that particularly are singling out a group that is already particularly vulnerable within society. Twitter's written policies prohibit misgendering, full stop.
It's so great. It's life-threatening to tell jokes. It's life-threatening. What's interesting about speech codes, always and everywhere, and specifically the speech codes that Yoel Roth has devoted his life over the past several years to upholding, is that they change constantly, and you never know when they change or on what grounds they change. They just change, and you're usually caught in the crossfire, and you're busted for saying something you didn't even know you weren't allowed to say. Probably the greatest example of this is that Yoel Roth himself once attacked trans people on Twitter. He called them trannies. Whoa, thereby threatening their lives. Quote, "It wouldn't be a trip to New York without at least one big scary tranny." That's an actual tweet from Yoel Roth, the kind of tweet that if you wrote it, he called the FBI. So now Yoel Roth has to pretend to be offended by all of this. Why? Because his purported offense, the terror he feels, gives him a pretext to censor you on behalf of the most powerful people in the world. That's how that works. So people with the most power claim they're defending the people with the least power in order to crush you. That's exactly the way it always works. By the way, Yoel Roth has deleted his old tranny tweets, and now he's just shocked. He's just shocked by the Babylon Bee. Huh. But it's not just Yoel Roth. Vijaya Gadde was his boss. Gadde, according to Matt Taibbi's reporting, oversaw the censorship of the New York Post reporting on the Hunter Biden laptop. And Gadde was later rewarded for that by the Biden administration. For real. The Biden administration appointed the person who effectively allowed Joe Biden to get elected president by censoring criticism of his business deals in which he took money from China. She was rewarded by getting an advisory role on CISA. That would be the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Ever heard of it? Oh, well, has a big effect on your life. It's a division of DHS, by the way. It's the censorship arm of the federal government. Now, how can this even exist? Our First Amendment specifically prohibits that. Why is there no court case on this? Why are people standing by and putting up with it? We know that its reach is extensive. New documents revealed in Missouri's ongoing lawsuit against big tech revealed just how aggressive the censorship that CISA practices is. So effectively, they're a hotline that allows the government to pressure the big tech companies to censor political opposition. On October 29, 2020, for example, an official with the Washington Secretary of State's office wrote to CISA, quote, "I wanted to flag 2 tweets with possible misinformation about the election." Misinformation about the election. Now, remember, misinformation is a new word. It's been around in the intel world for a long time, but it's never been used in common conversation until recently. And the distinction between misinformation and lying is that misinformation can be true. It doesn't have to be untrue to be censored. So it used to be truth is a defense. If you're telling the truth, you can say it. Not anymore. With mis and disinformation, if I don't like it, if I'm in power, I can censor you. So one of the offending tweets that this political official in Washington State was upset about was a reference to an election dispute in Washington State's 2004 gubernatorial election, which played out in the courts, and ultimately Democrats won that court battle. The tweet read this, quote, Washington State in 2004, judges ignored the real count and rewarded the Democrats. Another tweet from the same account read simply, ballots can appear whenever from whomever. Now, you can agree or disagree with those tweets. They seem true. But in any case, they're opinions. They're a political take. And you see tweets like that all the time on Twitter because this is a free country, or was. But what happened next is shocking. And it's amazing that anyone would defend it. The federal government shut down those opinions. Within minutes, CISA flagged the tweets to several DHS accounts. These people with guns. Then CISA sent the report directly to Twitter. Please see the report below from Washington, CISA wrote. And the tweets, of course, were censored. The government got a random Twitter user with a small following shut down because they didn't like his or her views on the 2004 election in Washington State because they criticized Democrats. The government. This is not a close call. This is a violation of the First Amendment to the Bill of Rights, to the centerpiece of our Constitution, and it's happening constantly. States reported posts they didn't like, and CISA, an arm of DHS, guys with guns, got Twitter to censor it. Kentucky's Secretary of State did this all the time. The documents show that. So did Colorado's. In fact, Colorado reported several political parody accounts to DHS, which then alerted Twitter, and all of them were pulled off. They were all parodies, by the way. Even if they weren't parodies, it doesn't matter, but they were, in fact, jokes. You're seeing one of them on your screen right now. Smoke weed every day, the account's bio reads, the official, unofficial Twitter account of the state of Colorado. But Twitter took the DHS complaint seriously, why wouldn't they, and censored the accounts. Quote, we will escalate, Twitter wrote. At the beginning of the election cycle in 2021, staffers for the Secretary of State of Arizona, ordered by gubernatorial candidate and then Secretary of State Kattie Hobbs, also directed censorship through CISA. Quote, I am flagging this Twitter account for your review, wrote someone on Hobbs's account to the Center for Internet Security. CISA was later CC'd on the email. Why? Well, according to Hobbs's office, the tweets were, quote, an attempt to further undermine confidence in the election institution in Arizona. Okay, so you're not allowed not to have confidence in elections? Really? This is the state where the biggest county took more than a week to count the ballots, and the printers didn't work on election day, though they worked the day before. But you're supposed to have total confidence. In fact, you're commanded to. And if you don't have confidence, you'll be punished. The email concluded, quote, thank you for your consideration in reviewing this matter for action. And of course, Twitter soon censored them. Thank you, we will escalate, Twitter replied. For the fifth time, this isn't just offensive. This is illegal. This is a crime. A crime is being, a very serious crime, a crime against our democracy, not trespassing in the Capitol or gazing upon Nancy Pelosi's desk. Influencing the outcome of elections. It's beyond belief. It's also very common, much more common than anyone thought. This weekend, Elon Musk suggested that Twitter interfered abroad, too. If they do it here, why wouldn't they do it in other countries? Musk suggested they interfered in the Brazilian elections. Quote, I'm seeing a lot of concerning tweets about the recent Brazil election, he tweeted the other day. If those tweets are accurate, it's possible that Twitter personnel gave preference to left-wing candidates. Okay. I mean, it's possible? If that happened, can you imagine? The people lecturing you every day about democracy are subverting democracy in foreign countries, in Brazil, probably in Hungary, probably in El Salvador, in any regime that they don't like, not because those regimes pose a threat to the United States, because they just don't like the cut of their jib. So what we're learning about state interference in democratic elections all over the world has long been suspected, now it's confirmed. And there's a lot more coming from Matt Taibbi and others. In the meantime, though, tonight we're joined by Kari Lake. As we just told you, we know that her opponent in the governor's race worked with big tech to censor her voters. Kari Lake joins us tonight. Kari Lake, thank you so much for coming on. Did you, I mean, I assume you must have suspected something like this was happening. How do you feel now that it's been confirmed?
Well, nothing surprises me now, to be honest, but this did, I was a little bit surprised. I mean, we saw what happened with Hunter's laptop in 2020. The DNC's behind it, Biden's people are behind it, keeping the narrative away from discussing the disturbing contents of that. So it shouldn't be surprising that states are doing this. And my opponent, who I wanted to recuse herself from the election more than a year ago because of conflict of interest, it wouldn't surprise me if her office was trying to silence people. I mean, we got silenced. At one point, my Twitter page got taken down because they didn't like one of the tweets I put up during the election. It makes me wonder who was behind that. We had to remove a tweet during the election in order to get our ability to communicate with our followers and the people who were supporting us. It is frightening what's happening with Twitter. This is an arm, it's a propaganda arm of our government, and we need to wake up right now and demand that we get some control over what's happening in our government. The FBI, and you know, we're talking about Twitter tonight. Let's talk Facebook. What about TikTok? Right. This thing is going to go so deep that I think people are going to be shocked when they learn the full extent. I can't wait to hear what they were doing when it comes to censoring us on COVID, when people's lives were at risk, when our children were being masked up. Shocking.
And with vaccines. Really quick, how can you have a democracy in a country where the government is suppressing speech? How can that be a democratic country?
I believe it's called fascism, and they're always accusing us of being the fascist one. And, you know, they spent 3 years talking about Russia, the collusion story, and they didn't want to talk about Hunter's laptop. They didn't want to talk about problems with our elections that we discovered in 2020 and we saw repeated in 22. When are we going to have a serious discussion about what's really wrong in this country? We don't have a lot of time left on the clock. And, you know, as Twitter said, what was the term they used? We're on it. We're going to get on it right away. Well, we're getting on it in Arizona, and the people have had enough. We're sick of the Kattie Hobbs office and the Secretary of State's office and what they've been up to. And we're going to start fighting back, and we're going to be drawing up some lawsuits in our election because we won't have elections that are run like they're run in third world countries. We have too much to save in this country to allow our elections to be run that way.
Well, Godspeed. I think I would hope all people would agree with that. Kari Lake, great to see you tonight. Thank you.
Thanks.